Hello again. I will be touching on animal avatars. Now, yes, technically this is a rather human trait. Each of us have our own animal avatars, and that's how it works. For me, I have connection to 3 animal avatars. One of the earth, which is a digger, I think would be a combination of a mole and one other ground-bearing creature that I'm not very familiar with. That's also a mammal. Even still, it's a lot more like a mole, the cross between a mole and a fox. Let's just put it that way. A lot of the connections I have are more canine than anything else. So, how does this play into what I'm actually saying that animal avatars are as a race? Well, it's because each of us have our own dormant animal avatars that we have not accessed that allows them to exist. Even such, that's not something that really should be overbearingly disowned. Because they actually do exist in a mind that is not existent, which it does sound counterproductive in that way, or counterintuitive, I should say. That allows them a more in-depth means to actually be able to run around and do as they please. However, should someone take notice of them, well, they are rather helpful, I should say, because humanity, in a way, did create them. Their primal culture, before they actually were introduced to the star race as a whole, in their own dimension, is a rather rough and brutal one. Because mostly the carnivores were taking over. They were using other species as their food source. I don't blame them for it, because they were starting to run out of food so quickly. They weren't able to find a certain balance between being able to farm and, well, I guess you'd say finding out what they really are. As of now, they really have a lot better time of their own survival, because they were introduced to the star race. They're able to travel and go wherever they please. When they first started out, it was a specific set of races. Now, it was only one system, granted, but there was only 2 planets that were habited. Planetoids, excuse me, because I'll get into that later. Nonetheless, these 2 planetoids allowed them a bit of refuge. The amphibs, they grew and pretty much multiplied as much as they pleased. They had their own food source, which was only limited by how much fungus they could grow. Now, the mole canine friend I have, named Rokul, he and a few others, when they first started out as primal, they were pretty much considered the do not even try digging after them sort of species, because, well, they're too fast. Not to mention, if they work together, they could cause a cave-in on you. In other words, they're like the dwarves of their planet. Which is quite amazing, really, is that they were the only surviving secondary nature to a few of the ones that actually had a sort of defense. Natural defense. Like claws or anything like that. That they actually were able to fight back. They couldn't. They were trying to keep some of the more aggressive animal avatars at bay. Eventually, it came to the point where the aggressors had enough of these beings that were rather, how should I put it? I guess in reflection you could say they turned them into cattle. But nonetheless, they actually were still, there are still a few that were uncaptured. They defied them. I have several stories that I could say in great detail about what they are and how they live. But I guess you could say the biggest one would have to be that elephant avatars were the first to actually start even considering going to the stars. They did, but unfortunately for them, they were unable to navigate, and, well, they became one with Source. Even still, that progressed them to an extreme point. That for some of the ones that actually don't want to fight anymore, to say, hey, where should we go? I mean, they're constantly coming after us. What should we do? Now, by this point, it was quite obvious to the amphibs of the second planetoid versus the main planetoid where most of the other animal avatars lived, that there was something above them that did not really fit into any category. Most of them had to actually develop gills, like salamanders or anything like that. Even still, they were able to get up to the upper crust, or the ice surrounding their little planetoid. They found out that just by putting a small structure through the ice, that they would actually be sucked out. Of course, they sealed it immediately, but after which, some of them actually started being curious of what is causing this. Well, then that actually they started trying this again, but with differing kinds of structures that equivalated to airlocks. This allowed them to crawl upon the surface of their planetoid. And what did they first see when they stepped foot onto these differing areas of their planetoid? No bigger, no smaller, but the ship that actually started coming towards them. Of course, it crashed into their planetoid, and guess which one that was? The elephant avatars. They started understanding, slowly but surely, that these beings came from another world. So they decided, let's see what else is out there. They were the first observers of, above all the animal avatars. It was still, by that time, there was another war going on, and another species had enough. They saw the wreckage on this planetoid, and they decided maybe we should actually try to go there, but this time be a little more prepared. And they did. Of course, this also warranted the notice of the Pleiadians as well. As soon as they took off, they actually started launching their own probe expeditionary forces to this main planetoid. After the species actually landed on the amphib planetoid, they actually started learning from them that there is much more to the multiverse than just what they have. And they were given supplies and shown another planetoid not far off. They settled on that planetoid and they've been there ever since. In the history of the animal avatars, I have to say the most clever would have to be that of mink origin. Because they are very witty, but despite their omnivorous tendencies, they have actually become very docile, I guess you could say. They wouldn't even think of eating meat anymore. After they settled on this planet, the Pleiadians finally just said, enough is enough. This has to stop. They went over and started distributing these special kinds of plants that actually tasted like meat. That pretty much settled the score right then and there. Everyone and anyone who actually had a specific task on their mind just vanished. All of it was distributed to one task alone: growing this plant. Everything just vanished. No war, no way of life other than just living simply. Soon after, clans were formed, and they themselves started ascending to the stars. The amphibs were actually assisted, in a way, to actually return to their main world, where prior some of their main worlder brethren, I guess you could say, were near extinction. Even such, some thought it best to stay on the main world rather than the amphib world. There was a small separation, but nonetheless, it did help out. Because when it came to one part of this planetoid, it was all desert all year round. Had its own forest and atmosphere when it comes to the main world. Its slow rotation allowed for scorching heat on one side and near arid to cold areas on the other side. This slow rotation not only actually formed the landscape, but also created a ring of mountains that shifts with this planet. I'm not sure what kind of core it has, because I wouldn't even think of digging through it. Even still, it's a major separator between some of the more nomadic desert peoples versus the forest and winter dwellers, I guess you could say. There is a lot to be said about these animal avatars. Some are wiser than the others, while others are far more devoted to themselves and learning. There's so much to be said, yet so little to be understood. I still remember a time that our Arcolm lost a very cherished member of her family. I won't say too much for the sake of information, but the way they perceive death is much more respectful of Source than anything else I've seen. Much more in tune with the land, with themselves, everything else. They still continue on the religious practices of their primal ancestors, but when the Pleiadians intervened, I guess you could say, it did change a lot of things. And I would say for sure that they use shrines and differing kinds of rituals as more of a calming effect, because they themselves also have emotion like that of humans. I don't want to just leave it off on a negative note here, because there is also one other thing that I see may not be done as much, but every time a major event in their history happens, even often rare, their celebrations are very extravagant, if not united. Heck, even some of the others that are not from their not from the main planet itself come to celebrate. That's all I really can say. Not much else that can be said here now. But I wish them the best, as they are, in a way, our relatives. I hope this was informative for you, and good day.